For decades, the International Space Station has been described as humanity's greatest engineering achievement in orbit, a glowing symbol of international cooperation floating silently above Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. From the ground, it looks peaceful, almost serene, like a bright moving star tracing a clean arc across the night sky. But inside that metallic structure, survival has never been guaranteed. The ISS is not just a laboratory, it is a fragile life support machine, operating in the most hostile environment humans have ever tried to live in. Every breath, every sip of water, every heartbeat aboard the station depends on systems that must function perfectly, day after day, year after year. And yet, for a long time, one fundamental problem threatened to turn the ISS from a triumph into a tomb. Space is not empty. It is violent, unforgiving, and relentlessly destructive. Extreme temperatures swing from burning heat to deadly cold within minutes. Radiation pours in from the sun and distant galaxies. Micrometeoroids, tiny fragments of rock and metal traveling faster than bullets, slam into the station without warning. But none of these were the ISS's greatest enemy. The biggest problem was far more subtle, far more dangerous, and far more human. It was the problem of sustainability. How do you keep people alive hundreds of kilometers above Earth when resupply is limited, mistakes are fatal, and failure is not an option? In the early days of the ISS, astronauts lived on borrowed time. Every mission relied heavily on constant resupply from Earth. Oxygen tanks, water containers, food packages, spare parts, everything had to be launched at enormous cost. Each kilogram sent to orbit cost tens of thousands of dollars. If supply missions failed, crews could be stranded. If political tensions rose, cooperation could collapse. If a launch vehicle exploded, as many did, the consequences could be catastrophic. The ISS was powerful, but it was also dangerously dependent. Water was the first nightmare. Astronauts need water not just to drink, but to eat, to clean, to cool equipment, and to survive. In microgravity, water behaves like a living creature, floating, clinging, spreading into spheres that can short-circuit electronics or block air filters. Early ISS missions burned through water supplies at an alarming rate. Recycling systems were inefficient and unreliable. Every liter wasted had to be replaced by launching another rocket from Earth. Engineers quickly realized that if the ISS was ever going to host long-duration missions, 6 months, a year, or longer, it needed to become something radical, a closed-loop ecosystem. But creating a closed-loop life support system in space is nothing like doing it on Earth. On Earth, gravity does most of the work for us. Air circulates naturally, liquids settle, waste falls down. In orbit, gravity disappears, and with it, all our instincts about how systems should behave. Urine doesn't flow downward, carbon dioxide doesn't sink, heat doesn't rise. Every process must be forced, controlled, and monitored. One small failure can cascade into disaster. Oxygen posed an equally terrifying challenge. Astronauts consume oxygen constantly, and exhale carbon dioxide, which becomes toxic if allowed to accumulate. Early space stations relied heavily on stored oxygen tanks and chemical scrubbers that removed CO but could not recycle it efficiently. These systems worked, but only temporarily. Filters saturated, tanks emptied, replacement parts were limited. A single malfunction could turn breathable air into poison within hours. Then there was waste. Human waste in space is not just unpleasant, it is dangerous. Bacteria grow faster in microgravity. Fluids drift into sensitive areas. Improvised solutions were not acceptable. Waste needed to be processed, contained, and ideally reused. Throwing it away was not sustainable. Sending it back to Earth was impractical. Ignoring it was deadly. For years, the ISS existed in a precarious balance, held together by ingenuity, constant monitoring, and a steady stream of cargo ships. But behind the scenes, engineers knew the truth. This model could not last. If humanity ever wanted to go farther, to the Moon, to Mars, to deep space, the ISS had to become a testing ground for true long-term survival. And that meant solving its biggest problem once and for all. The solution did not come from a single invention, but from a philosophy shift. Instead of treating space like a place where supplies are consumed, scientists began treating it like an environment that must be managed, recycled, and sustained. The station would not just support life. It would become a machine that mimics Earth itself. The breakthrough came with advanced life support systems capable of recycling nearly everything. Water recycling systems were redesigned to process not just wastewater, but urine, sweat, and even moisture from the air. Every breath astronauts exhaled, every drop of sweat that evaporated, every tear, every spill, all of it was captured, filtered, purified, and reused. What once seemed unthinkable became routine. Astronauts drinking water that had once been urine, clean to a purity higher than most water on Earth. This system was not just efficient, it was revolutionary. The water recovery system pushed recycling efficiency above 90%. That meant the station no longer needed massive water deliveries. Crews could survive longer, safer, and with far less dependence on Earth. What had once been a critical weakness became one of the ISS's greatest strengths. Oxygen generation followed a similar path. Instead of relying on stored oxygen, the station began producing its own using electrolysis. Water molecules were split into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen was released into the cabin air, while the hydrogen was safely vented or reused in other chemical processes. Combined with carbon dioxide removal systems that captured exhaled CO and converted it back into usable compounds, the ISS became something unprecedented, a station that could breathe with its crew. These systems were not perfect. They failed. They broke. They required constant maintenance. Astronauts became not just scientists and explorers, but mechanics, plumbers, electricians, and emergency responders. Every crew trained extensively for worst-case scenarios, practicing repairs in underwater simulations that mimicked weightlessness. On orbit, improvisation became an art form. Duct tape, zip ties, and creativity often stood between survival and catastrophe. One of the most dramatic reminders of the ISS's vulnerability came when unexpected air leaks were detected. Pressure dropped slowly, silently. There was no explosion, no warning alarm at first, just data suggesting that the station was bleeding air into space. Finding the leak was like searching for a needle in a vacuum. Astronauts sealed modules, monitored pressure changes, and hunted for microscopic cracks caused by thermal stress or debris impacts. Each hour mattered. Each decision carried the weight of lives. Yet, time and again, the ISS endured. Each crisis led to improvements. Each failure led to better systems, stronger materials, smarter designs. The station evolved, not just as a structure, but as a living experiment in survival. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of how the ISS solved its biggest problem is not technological, it is human. The station is built and operated by countries that, on Earth, often disagree, compete, or even threaten each other. But in orbit, politics fade. There are no borders in space. Russian modules rely on American power. European experiments depend on Japanese components. Canadian robotic arms assist astronauts from every nation. Survival demands cooperation. This collaboration allowed the ISS to survive political tensions, funding crises, and shifting priorities. When one nation faced challenges, others stepped in. When one supply line failed, alternatives were found. The station became proof that humanity can work together when the stakes are high enough. Today, the ISS stands as more than a research platform. It is a blueprint for the future. Every system that keeps astronauts alive today is a prototype for tomorrow's deep space missions. The water you recycle on the ISS is the water you will drink on Mars. The oxygen you generate in orbit is the oxygen future explorers will breathe on the Moon. The waste you manage in microgravity is the waste humanity must learn to live with beyond Earth. The biggest problem the ISS faced was never just technical. It was existential. Could humans truly live off Earth, not just visit it? Could we adapt our biology, our technology, and our mindset to survive in a place that never wanted us there? The ISS answered that question, not with words, but with decades of quiet endurance. Every night, as it passes overhead, carrying people who sleep, work, laugh, and dream in zero gravity, the ISS tells a story. A story of fragility and resilience, of failure and adaptation, of a species learning, slowly and painfully, how to survive beyond its home world. And in solving its biggest problem, the International Space Station did something even greater. It proved that the future of humanity does not end at Earth's atmosphere. It begins above it.